Welcome to Women at Halftime podcast for men and women at mid-career or the halftime of life with issues that concern you. Maximize your skills, resources, and experience to live an even more fulfilling and significant second half of life. Right here with me, Deborah Johnson, on Women at Halftime podcast. Well, hello, Deborah Johnson here. So good to be back with you this week with a great topic, a life of fulfillment or discontentment. Oh boy, that might hit home for many of you today as you listen. A couple reminders for you is Summit is still out, still available. Of course, other books as well. My Women at Halftime book is a wonderful book that you might want to read because it goes through every step of the hero mountain. So let's kind of dive into this topic today because it is a very relevant topic for most of us as we think about living a fulfilled life. And if I asked what kind of life that you'd like to live personally, well, most would answer, yeah, a life of fulfillment, not a life of discontentment. But the definition of living that life of fulfillment, that can change with life circumstances and events. And if you look at previous generations, especially those that came through any part of the Great Depression of the 1930s and 40s, a life of fulfillment meant having the basic necessities of life. I mean, they were concerned about food and sustenance, and they had to just use what they had. And in fact, they used some things so long that they actually broke. And then they didn't throw those items away because there had to be a way to fix them someday. And this is why my father stored 11 broken lawnmowers in a storage building. Yes, and we may laugh at this right now, but when you had to build your first home from scrap wood that you found in a dump, you may be also tempted to hang on to lawnmowers that you thought could still have some value because you thought maybe I could fix it. We live today in a throwaway culture and a gotta have it now society. And with the increase of shopping online, most industries have made items easy to order and even easier to return. Free, convenient, and easy is the new mantra, and people are ordering more now than ever. And the number of digital buyers has gone up from 1.32 billion in 2014 to 2.14 billion in 2021. That's a huge increase, 1.32 to 2.14. But does all this ordering, does that bring a life of fulfillment? Not really. Well, we're going to look at 3 actions that will hopefully help you in your quest for a life of fulfillment. And number 1, take stock of what you have. How many times have you looked at an item on Amazon and seen right below that product, a message you might also like? Then a little bit further, you see others who bought this item also bought. And then you also see frequently bought with. And you find yourself clicking on multiple items with what ends up to be a full cart, spending much more than you even planned. Now, I have to tell you a little story about a purchase that I recently bought from Home Depot. And we have a small fountain that desperately needed cleaned and emptied. We've had some winds, we've had it gone through the rains. And so I found the perfect submersible, how can I say that? Submersible pump to do the job. So I thought, okay, so that should be fairly easy. I will just order this little pump that I see. It's perfect. I mean, it will fit perfectly. I looked at all the instructions. It's submersible. It's lightweight. I can easily put this right into my fountain and it will pump all the water out. And the instructions said, oh, it can be used with a garden hose. Perfect. But right below said you might also want or need some attachments. Okay, well, I got the attachments. If you are watching the video, you can see the attachments I got. Oh my goodness, these are like 2 different attachments, but oh, okay. So they look a little large, but I'll try them out. Oh, and then frequently bought with was something else. It was the hose. Okay, so this was the hose. This is, oh wow, quite the hose. I mean, it's not a garden hose, but it's another type of hose. You can hear the rustling of the paper if you're on, if you're just listening, but I'm actually holding up the product. Well, what happened was when I got this product, none of the attachments, not the little extra attachments or even the hose, were nearly at the same size to fit the pump. Nothing fit. So I will need to return 2 of those items. Well, what is the story with this? It's actually fairly humorous when I think about it, because I went for that frequently bought with. I mean, with the hose, and people also purchased. Well, since it wasn't that expensive, all of this went into my cart. 3 items instead of 1 with just a click, even though the pump said it could be used with just a garden hose. Well, there's a great lesson in this. Because when all of those items arrived, nothing fit together. And it really proved that point that I really didn't need it. I already had everything I needed with just that simple pump. And I have the garden hose. In fact, I might just pick up a cheap garden hose that will be much cheaper than the other items, so I can do just a simple setup. Well, the illustration reminded me, though, of something else, because this has been the case with many entrepreneurs during the lockdowns. Because during those, when we were isolated doing everything virtually, many entrepreneurs, they bought all of this extra tech item, all these, gadgets and switchers and everything during those lockdowns for all of their virtual presentations. And the demonstrations were so impressive. It made everything look just so easy. But when the items arrived, the learning curve was a bit difficult. So the items were just put aside until they could learn to use them. But for many, that time never came, as they kept using what they had, and it was working great. It's amazing how they used what they had, just like my grandparents and parents did. And presently, some of those entrepreneurs who bought that equipment, they're getting rid of their extra inventory. And much of it is still in the original box for pennies on the dollar. And it's a definite advantage for those of us who are still building out our tech studios. I work with tech, but it illustrates an important point here is to not only take stock of what you have with physical items, but also with your skills. There are certain items I will never purchase, such as a dental chair or a surgeon's scalpel. Why would I need those? They would just sit unused. And those examples may sound a bit outlandish, but depending on your skills and your area of focus, it would not be ridiculous for a dentist or a surgeon to purchase those items. So that's a very important point in our first in our first point there. And number two, we're going to move on here to take stock, not only take stock of what you have, but also to take action. Many at mid-career, the halftime of life, or during times of economic shifts or change, they're looking at life with a fresh perspective, and this may be you. After 2 years of uncertain health risks, of a worldwide pandemic, and an economy that brought shutdowns and devastation to many lives and businesses, this is especially relevant today. The pool of skills, resources, and experience is greater than ever from those entering this stage of their life. And we need those resources right now more than ever. And if you are listening to this and you are in that camp, we need you. At this point of time in a person's life, more than any other time, is when the focus becomes more honed in on that life of fulfillment or a life of significance. And it's easy to let discontentment and disillusionment take over without that focus. A good question to ask oneself is, what will you leave behind besides stuff? After losing both sets of parents, which we've done in the last 5 years, I can tell you where a lot of stuff goes. Even if it's good stuff, most stuff will not be needed or wanted. And you can just imagine where all those lawnmowers went that my father had hung on to for so many years. What you can leave of much more significance is your impact on an organization or your influence on people. Many wake up to see the needs around them when they are facing their own mortality. And this is the time of life many nonprofits are created or joined. An organization like Business for Business, B4B, it had its inception when a wonderful friend and colleague of mine, Joan D'Souza, she saw how many small businesses in her area were just struggling to survive. And she had come from 20 years of corporate experience, and she knew she could help them. And those businesses didn't just need her help, but they needed help from a community that would give input and support. And she had the skills to facilitate what was truly needed. And she's changing lives and changing businesses. FASD Kids, you'll have all the links in the article. If you look on the articles, started by another wonderful friend and colleague, Marcia Brendal. And this helps parents and kids deal with fetal alcohol syndrome. I also interviewed her on this podcast. You'll want to click in on that. And the FASD is more prevalent than even autism. And her experience as a medical professional, it helped. But even more than that, she had several adopted grandchildren with this syndrome. And that drove her to take action from her discontent with the amount of resources that were just not available. In applying this to my situation, I have no desire to leave a building full of stuff, but what I do want to leave are books, a vibrant podcast with impactful messages that will help others move their life forward, and published music scores that people can enjoy long after I'm gone. And I know that most of my other stuff will land in a large dumpster, as our kids will really have no use for it. That's reality. So after we take action, part of that taking action is our point number 3, is to redirect your focus. Part of creating a life of fulfillment is deciding what you will pursue and how you will use your time. Discontentment compounds when you feel like you're spinning your wheels in an unending roundabout. Defining your core values is tantamount to not only creating, but maintaining a life of fulfillment. And if you've not defined or even redefined your main core values in some time, take the time to do that now. Those basic core values, both personally and professionally, again, I will direct you to an article on this that will help direct your future decisions. Very important. Now, your focus will tend to change slightly through each year, depending on a number of factors that it could include health, finances, or even relationship status. But your core values should be fairly consistent when you decide what those values are. So take that time to really focus your life as well as your business on a purposeful goal. Now, goals don't need to be grand and huge. In fact, I call them more objectives, but they do need to be measurable and obtainable. Accomplishing them is possible when you instill the right habits in your life. And I'm huge on believing in strong habits. And there are great books on this, such as Tiny Habits, Atomic Habits, and others. And some of those, I reread them every year. Taking time with this process will give you greater control of your own life or of fulfillment, in contrast to confusion and fear. Oh, so many are living with fear still, with discontentment and even depression. And we know what fear can do. You can just be frozen in fear. And I want you to live with that contentment and fulfillment and a life well lived. It feels purposeful and fulfilling, but getting there, it does take forethought, planning, and positive action. And it's not too early to really act assertively. It doesn't matter how old you are or how old you are becoming, but that thankfulness and that gratefulness and giving spirit brings so much contentment and fulfillment, and they're qualities that all should be proactively applying in their lives. And for some, this might be you too, the giving of resources, it provides a great feeling of contentment, but not everyone is in the position to do so. And some people can give more than others in the monetary sense. But everyone, this includes you, has the power to change an attitude and encourage others with actions, attitudes, and focus. And all of those will truly lead to a greater life of fulfillment. And that is my wish for you. We have come from a fear-filled society. We've come from social media messages, a barrage of them, daily, hourly, minute by minute, full of fear. People are afraid, I could get this virus like any minute, or I could die, or what am I going to do? And what if I get sick? I can't work. All of this fear. And this was not only the fear in a medical sense, but many are facing that fear with businesses or with just life in general. And we have normal parts of life that still have their changes, such as financial changes in the times of life we go through, relationship changes, and kids growing up, and school bills that you may even be still paying off. We don't know. Where are you going to live? Do you want to live where there are so many of those decisions. A life of fulfillment is purposeful. It takes action, but spend time with all of those core values. Spend time thinking. Don't just ingest what's coming at you. Spend time thinking for yourself with that thankful and grateful heart, spirit, with what you do have, because all that stuff will just disappear at some point. We can't take it with us. And that's my big message for today. I just hope you've really enjoyed this. Make sure that I do write an article with every single episode, womenathalftime.com. You can find the link there. Also on any of my websites, Goals for Your Life, Deborah Johnson Speaker, DJ Works Music. I always put out new music as well. So you'll want to get on my weekly newsletter I don't blast you, I don't spam you, but the articles come out weekly and any updates that I have. And it's a good way to keep in touch and for you to connect with me as well. Share this with people that you care about and take a listen, have them listen and follow. And that means a lot to me, as well as reviews. It helps keeps me going. So thank you so much for listening. Again, Deborah Johnson here today, and I will look forward to being with you next time.
Thank you for joining us. It is because of our wonderful listeners like you that we keep going strong week after week. Share and follow us for new shows to inspire you and encourage you in your life's journey. You can find all of our articles and links at womenathalftime.com.